I'm sorry, item number 3, which is the water forward. 6 people signed up to speak on the water forward item. I think that several of us have handed out direction pages. Let's do that, but first let's have a motion. Mayor Pro Tem, do you want to make a motion?
I would. Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move approval and acceptance of item 3, please.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? Councilmember Flanagan seconds that motion. Moved and seconded. Before we get to the 6 people that have signed up to speak, I think I see here 3 handouts with respect to direction. Let's outline those real fast, and then we'll ask for the public to speak. Mayor Pro Tem, do you want to go first?
Sure. And my motion sheet is also Councilmember Kitchen's. We had overlapping areas of concern, and so I'll address the ones that I intend to make, and that's number 1. But it captures her points on benchmarking. And I think, Mayor, I believe that it's probably in line with a couple of your bullet points as well, including the first one. So this would direct the city manager to work with city staff and the Water Forward Task Force to condense to the greatest extent feasible the implementation timeline for these specific strategies: dual plumbing, landscape transformation, development-focused, water benchmarking and budgeting, and alternative water ordinances. I'll let Councilmember Kitchen address the others, but let me just be very clear that by condense, I don't mean sort of, we intend that really to mean accelerate. And so I think that's very in line with your first bullet.
Okay. Councilmember Kitchen, you want to
Sure.
Outline 2 and 3?
Yes, I want to reiterate what the Mayor Pro Tem said with regard to item number 1, and I really appreciate all the hard work of the task force and our staff. And so this is just in line with what we talked about at the work session, the importance of accelerating to the greatest extent possible the implementation timeline. And I was particularly wanting to call out the landscape transformation timeline, particularly related to, well, both incentives and ordinances, and also the development-focused water benchmarking and budgeting, which in the current timeline would not be implemented for 13 years, which I understand that it's a complex issue, but I do think that we really need to accelerate that. 13 years is a long time. So then the second item from the motion sheet for the Mayor Pro Tem and I just states the city manager is also directed to work with staff to ensure substantive stakeholder outreach and involvement regarding the location of any future aquifer storage and recovery facility. Aquifer storage is an important component of the water forward plan. It also is complicated and is it takes a long time to develop, and it's just important that that we have additional stakeholder outreach and involvement, particularly with regard to the location of that particular facility. So, and then Mayor Pro Tem, do you want me to speak to number 3 also? Okay. Then the third point of our joint motion sheet here is that the city manager is further encouraged to explore the benefit of coordinated stakeholder outreach for the development of multiple ordinances, both to maximize staff time and resources as well as to expedite the timeline for implementation. And that's just a recognition that there are multiple ordinances proposed in Water Forward, and which will involve stakeholder outreach and involvement, and their interlocking issues, and as well as the stakeholders who will want to participate. So coordinating that would be most helpful, both for the staff and the community.
Thank you. Councilmember Alter, you want to outline the direction that you've handed out?
Sure. I need to call up Mr. Slusher for the first part to explain it.
I'm sorry?
There's a piece I need to ask Mr. Slusher to talk about before I do the first direction, if I might.
Bring Mr. Slusher up then.
Thank you. Daryl Slusher, Austin Water.
Thank you. So I wanted to invite you to speak briefly to some water savings and water efficiencies that Austin Water has been working on with the Parks Department with respect to our aquatic facilities that grew out of the Aquatic Master Plan, and my office has been advocating for these, and I wanted you to speak to them briefly because the first item relates to wanting to accelerate those programs and expand that type of process to other departments.
Okay, and we have a program underway with PARD where we've done about, I think, at least five pools so far. So what we do is advanced metering infrastructure that we put on there, and that gives PARD a better way to determine what their usage is and to narrow it down to like this, maybe the restroom's using this much, the pool's using this much, the irrigation's using this much. So it really allows them to examine it more closely, and they've already achieved some significant savings. I think Director McNeely, or Interim Director McNeely, she sent some memos to council about that. So that's one aspect of it. And then related to that is wastewater charges, where they have evaporation from the pools. On some of them at the end of the season, they'll irrigate the surrounding land instead of sending it into the wastewater system. There's evaporation, and where before it seemed like they were getting charged gallon for gallon, that everything they take through the water meter was being charged for wastewater, and now we're better estimating how much actually goes in the wastewater system, and that's achieving significant savings for them. So that's the core of the program right there.
Great, thank you. So the first part of my direction.
Thanks.
The first part of my direction broadly speaks to accelerating that program and trying to see how we could imitate that and improve upon that for other departments that have water usage, whether it's in their buildings or in their processes. So council directs the city manager to instruct each City of Austin department to assess its building and structures, including city pools, to reduce or eliminate water loss due to leaks. And it should also talk about efficiencies there as well. So including city pools to reduce or eliminate water loss due to leaks and improve efficiencies. The second item is an encouragement of a tool that we just used a few weeks ago and have used on occasion, but was not called out in the Water Forward plan itself, and that is the Texas Water Development Board funding options, which can save us millions of dollars. And in this direction, and I've talked about this with the water utility, would be, considering whether we need to have a grant manager to monitor those so that we can take advantage of the savings. While it would cost money and you'd require a person to meet the requirements, it would be worth the amount that you would be saving using that, which could be in the millions. So council directs the city manager to consider using cost-saving Texas Water Development Board funding options or other outside funding sources such as loans or grants for water projects whenever possible. The latter part, I think, is in the plan. The first part wasn't, but that was the language that we landed on. The third one is concurrent to ordinance development, consider advancing educational materials, training, and facilitation of demonstration projects, particularly with regard to dual plumbing. This is in line with the other folks you're asking to accelerate implementation, but this allows for us to take care of some of the investments in education and the utility of having demonstration projects that show that these things can work, and I would like them to consider that in conjunction, obviously, with the task force. Fourth one is council directs the city manager to consider a stage in the city's permitting process to discuss with large developments how to incorporate water conservation strategies early in the design phase. I think that might overlap some with one that the mayor has. And finally, council directs the city manager to consider methods for interdepartmental collaboration to work to help ensure we have a skilled and developed workforce, including but not limited to plumbing professionals, ready to implement alternative water strategies for buildings and development, and to identify whatever resources the city may need to bring to bear to support the necessary training. So as I mentioned in work session, in order for Water Forward to succeed, we need to have professionals who can build our buildings according to what's being asked of them in ordinances or via incentives. And some of this work is relatively new, and we have a shortage of plumbers, which drives up the cost. And that's something that the city could use to achieve multiple goals, the goals of Water Forward and the goals of our workforce development programs.
Okay, thank you. And colleagues, I handed out an additional proposed direction. There were 5 items on that. It's been posted onto the message board. I think a lot of these reinforce many of the points that were raised by the Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Kitchen, and Councilmember Alter. It does not address the last one that Councilmember Alter raised. Just by way of parenthetical thought, we approved the regional workforce development plan, which focused on 3 areas: tech, healthcare delivery, but also skilled trades. So I think that the last one of these items fits with that, and similar to how we've organized the work on the bond in 2016 to create apprenticeships and programs where people are being trained. I think the bond election we just passed with respect to affordable housing gives us the opportunity to do that as well, and certainly in areas like this, and I would hope we take advantage of those. The 5 points that I handed out on the page, similar. The first one was asking the city manager to expedite the timelines of codes and ordinances recommended by Water Forward where feasible to increase the city's resilience to the next drought, which I think has been said probably several different ways by folks. Second, city manager and Austin Water would consider orienting impact fees and rates to promote Water Forward so that any changes in fees and rates is done with a lens of advancing the Water Forward goals. The third one was just looking at the alignment of Austin Water and watershed protection development to advance Water Forward. Certainly there's nothing in here that mandates any kinds of structural changes and the like. That's a management function, not a council function. But by way of direction, we're just noting that reporting structures, which can be done formally or informally, I think, and the performance metrics that we're working out, there's a way to really align those, because part of the discussion from the task force was the real need to align those efforts. And then the fourth one was considering ordinances related to on-site strategies, considering extending these strategies to entire master plan developments, including PUDs, PUDs, and other special districts. I think what staff said is that the Water Forward document allows for that. It doesn't specifically state that, so I just wanted to make that clear. And then the last one related to asking that you consider creating a research and development unit within the water utility, really to advance future business model innovation, leveraging new developments as an opportunity to test and deploy new technologies, operational strategies, and revenue structures. We have this inherent conflict in the water department, as we do in Austin Energy, where we make money selling something that we are also trying to stop selling as much of. And that inherent conflict leads us to sometimes difficulty in processing policies. And I think there have been discussions by colleagues on the council that in the future we're going to have to figure out how to align those in a world where those things change, perhaps finding additional income streams. I always like the example of PEC way back when it was obviously a power company, but began its work by being a credit entity to help people buy washing machines and appliances, which helped create the market for the product that they were selling. But that credit function became a income stream for PEC while it was developing the other things. So taking a look at that. All right, I think that those are all the directions. Councilmember Kitchen?
I just wanted to comment on one of the items that in the direction of the mayor, and just reemphasize and thank you for recognizing the relationship between the utility and watershed protection. We had some conversation about the relationship between Water Forward and the update of the city's flood mitigation plan, recognizing that they're not directly related, but that it would be important as the city moves forward with updating our overall citywide flood mitigation plan, that we keep in mind places where there might be some synergies with Water Forward.
Okay. Councilmember Flanagan.
Thanks to everybody for pulling this direction together. I think it all sounds really good, and I just wanted to thank Councilmember Kitchen for the item about combining the public engagement pieces. Yeah. I think it's something that even last night at our Project Connect meeting, I heard from the community their engagement fatigue. And so, thinking about that as a broader organization about how might we combine engagement opportunities and have the community be more focused and best leverage our time. So I'm glad to see that added here.
All right, let's, Mayor Pro Tem.
I just had a quick comment, Mayor, about your fourth item, your fourth bullet regarding PUDs. It's my understanding, and maybe staff can confirm it if we need to, that several of the planned unit developments that are coming forward are already integrating many of these strategies. And so I appreciate you having this as a bullet. I see that as very low-hanging fruit. And in fact, if that's already the expectation, I would hope that we would codify that expectation just as very soon as we can.
Okay. All right, so let's go down to public comment. And as we go to public comment, on behalf of the council, reiterating what many of us said at the work session when this first came up, a lot of people did a lot of work over this over a long period of time. Certainly our staff, many departments, all contributed to this, and for that work, greatly appreciated. But also this was a really significant lift for members of our community on the task force that was created, and we're all real appreciative and recognize that work.
Mayor.
We have 6 people to speak.
Mayor,
Yes.
I just wanted to piggyback off of Mayor Pro Tem's comment there, because there's some similarities, but they're slightly different. The direction in yours and mine, they coexist perfectly fine. But I had recognized that in the PUD process, they've incorporated a step for conversations over those kinds of water improvements. But there are other developments that don't go through the PUD process, where we don't have a way early in the process for there to be those conversations about water quality and water usage and other kinds of things. And so I was trying in my direction to be able to create that opportunity in other areas as well.
And that sounds good. I think everybody said lots of different ways. I mean, we're looking at ordinances right now that are being developed. We just want to make sure that as they're being developed with broad applications for different kinds of development in the city. All right, let's go to the public discussion. Let's see how many things we can take care of here this morning. We're beginning with this. Is Brian Zapchuk here? What about David Foster? You'll have 3 minutes if you want to take it all. Is Angela Richter here? Why don't you come on down?
Good morning,
to the
Mayor
podium.
and council members.
Mr. Foster,
it's good
why
to
don't
be
you
here.
begin?
My name is David Foster. I'm here to speak on behalf of Clean Water Action. And I want to urge you to pass this plan today. I also support the resolutions or the direction that I'm hearing from the dais to the water utility to speed some of this up. So this is a tremendous moment for us, and I think Chair Charlene Lurig of the task force said it best when she said that if we pass this plan, Austin will become the only major city in the country that has a plan in place to meet its water demand for the future without taking somebody else's water. So this is a very sustainable plan. It's a cost-effective plan. And there are various things I want to highlight real quickly about what there is to like about this plan. There's a strong emphasis on conservation, continuing and strengthening the programs that we have now, as well as rolling out new ones, foremost a landscape transformation ordinance. The aquifer storage and recovery piece is also very significant. This is a very simple idea. You simply take water during times when we have a lot of water in the Colorado River, and you store it underground and retrieve that water during times of drought. And having that kind of storage would also help us through these water quality upsets like the one we just experienced where we had to issue our first ever boil water notice. And there's also a component that would involve expanding the use of reclaimed water. This is water, of course, that is sewage. It's partially treated and pumped back out into parts of the city for use to meet non-potable needs, irrigation, toilet flushing, and so forth. And last not least, the part that I'm most excited about is the use of what this plan calls alternative water sources. Though these are those streams that fall on the city itself that buildings themselves can exploit. It's air conditioning condensate, it's rainwater harvested off the roof, it's stormwater harvested off pavement, it's treated black water. It does involve dual plumbing of new buildings, and at some point perhaps also retrofitting existing buildings. And this is very exciting because I think this helps make Austin a much more climate resilient city, much more resilient to the impacts of climate change by exploiting these water sources that we're now simply wasting. And I think it's helpful to point out in this context that even during the last drought, we did have some major storms that hit Austin itself but missed the reservoirs. So that water went unused. So by building this into our city, we have the opportunity to capture and use these water sources in a way, frankly, that nobody else is doing in the country now. And I also encourage you to accelerate on the timeline these components because we're seeing so many buildings go up so fast. Hardly a week goes by and we don't see a new crane or a new building, a condo tower, et cetera. And every one of those buildings that is built without taking advantage of these opportunities is a missed opportunity for us as a city. So finally, I simply want to conclude by expressing my appreciation to Austin Water Utility. The staff has put many long hours and months and weeks and so forth of effort into this. And also to the members of the task force who did this as volunteers, month in, month out. And not least, I want to acknowledge Mayor Pro Tem Kathy Tovo for being the lead sponsor back in 2014 when this got started. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is Diane Kennedy here? You have time donated by Andre, the bomber drop. Why don't you come on down to this podium? You'll have 5 minutes if you want to take that much. And Ms. Richter, you have 3 minutes.
Great. Angela Richter, Save Barton Creek Association. Good morning, everybody. A lot of what I'll say will kind of mimic what you heard from David, but SBCA is very supportive of this plan's direction. We're really excited about diversifying our water supply in ways that are not importing someone else's water, and also all the decentralized strategies that David spoke about. It's another important aspect of this plan is the fact that we're moving towards using non-potable water sources and decentralized non-potable water sources for our non-potable needs. I really appreciated also hearing all of the motions made today. Appreciate the attention to our comments that we got to you earlier this week. And given all the motions that I heard today, I feel very optimistic about the future of this plan, its implementation, the future of the Water Forward Task Force in helping with that implementation. Just a couple of quick points on the ASR. In addition to the stakeholder process, which I think is important, I think that there's additional science that's needed to really understand whether there are better options than the Carrizo-Wilcox. It's my understanding that there was a study that was done within the water utilities service area, but didn't extend outside the service area, and to understand whether there's anything outside the service area, but not as far as the Carrizo-Wilcox, that could really help bring down the energy use and thus carbon footprint of that type of project. On another just really quick point, I hope in the implementation of the landscape transformation ordinance, we'll also be looking at our current commercial landscape policies and identifying whether there's any opportunity for water savings there as well. And finally, there was some language in the plan that suggested a possible either-or dynamic between these alternative on-site water sources and the utilities purple pipe. That is, currently the case for our AC condensate policy, where buildings don't necessarily have to use those on-site strategies if they have the purple pipe. And so we'd like to see that really thought out in this process as well, and not seen as an either-or. That's pretty much it. I do support the plan. Save Barton Creek Association supports the plan. We're optimistic about the outcomes of this process and really want to applaud everyone for their work on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before Ms. Kennedy begins, is Roy Whaley here? I think I saw him a second ago. Mr. Whaley, if you want to come on down to the other podium. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Diane Kennedy. I'm here on the behalf of, I guess, several entities. Number one, I'm a lifelong Austin resident and look forward to spending the rest of my life in Austin. So water's very important to that. Growing up here, enjoyed the lakes, and I consider those an integral part of Austin. I have also served on the Water Task Force, the pleasure of Councilmember Alter. I've enjoyed it immensely and feel like we tried very hard to take into account all of the necessities of a plan for this extremely long period of time. I mean, none of us can think forward for 100 years, but we looked a lot towards sustainability, the environmental sensitivities, and affordability of having water for our residents for that period of time. I think when we started, at least in my case, I didn't know what I didn't know. And I think that's still the case. because we have a plan that is making assumptions on technologies that are going to be changing very rapidly. And that is why we built in the 5-year review of the plan. I think everybody needs to remember that this is a living document, that this is a roadmap, that it is not written in stone, and that there will be many changes probably to the plan, whether it's location of the aquifer or the science of the aquifers or whatever it is. I too agree with the council wanting to expedite where we can, because every time I see a new tower go up, I think, oh my gosh, a missed opportunity. So I agree that the moving forward expeditiously is important, and that that staff is in tune with doing that. I also am here to speak on behalf of the Austin Board of Realtors. I'm a member of the legislative management team there. I've been a realtor in Austin for 40 years, and in that job, I have and am still talking to many, many, many residents of Austin. And speaking for the Austin Board of Realtors, we represent some 12,000 realtor members who are out there touching residents of this city every single day. So when it comes to public engagement, I ask that you use us as a resource. Help us help educate the citizens, the residents, with what they need to know, and the people that are moving into our beautiful city. And I'm amazed when I hear people coming from other parts of the country and they hear what we're doing. They're impressed. They're encouraged. They're coming from areas where they've had it much, much more difficult than we have, and so it's a very good thing for our city to have this moving forward. So I just would ask you to approve on behalf of Austin Board of Realtors also. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Mr. Whaley, 3 minutes.
Howdy, y'all. My name's Roy Whaley. I am the Conservation Chair for the Austin Regional Group of the Sierra Club. It's the week after Thanksgiving, so I've been making, of course, last week my list of all the things I'm thankful for. And I'm very thankful to get to work with such a wonderful group of people and hitchhike along with their statements also, and don't need to repeat everything that they've said, but give it a big thumbs up. Also, I'm very thankful for all the work that the Volunteer Task Force has done for all this time, and I really appreciate their dedication, their time, and their insight into this. I'm a child of the 60s, so I grew up on the space program. When NASA launched to go to the moon, they were only on target 6% of the time. 94% of the time they spent adjusting what they were doing, but they launched. And I believe that we need to launch Water Forward. And then, since, as Diane said, it is a living document, that we spend the time necessary to adjust to that goal. And just as we landed on the moon, we will make Water Forward successful. One thing that I do have a concern about is, well, let me first express my appreciation for the water utility and all the people there, and the fact that they continue to deliver good, clean water to our homes and businesses every day. Let me also express my appreciation for watershed protection and the great work that they have done, and their openness to have community conversations and to talk with the activists and work together. And I do think that water utility and watershed protection need to work closely together and have better communication. I do think that they need to continue to live in separate houses. I believe that we need to keep those two separate and not merge them, but to keep that separation and keep the good work that both entities are doing, but improve their communication between each other. And so that would be the ask I would have on that, and accelerate. Get it done. Let's get this thing done. And that's all I have to say at this time, because I know we're going to be discussing this in the future. So we will have more to say as you will. And so let me say thank you.
Thank you very much. Those are all the speakers we have. Are there any objection to any of the directions that were handed out? Hearing, yeah, Councilmember Poole.
I don't have any objection to the direction we've heard, but I wanted to add one piece to it,
Okay.
if I may. I wanted to acknowledge what Angela Richter said about the distance to the Carrizo-Wilcox Aquifer, and to ask, as part of the direction and part of the due diligence, that we do the best we can to find other sources closer to Austin,
Okay.
to the extent that's possible.
And with that additional direction, the record should note that there are no objections to the directions that were handed out. We have a motion and a second in front of us. Any discussion before we vote, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I don't have objection to any of the direction, but I think I will more formally change condense to accelerate, just to be very clear about that. And I talked a little bit about the history of this at our work session, not the one this week, but previously, but not all of you were there. So I just want to reiterate again how grateful I am to the community members who came forward to the council. I think Bill Bunch had done some public information requests that revealed that there were ongoing negotiations with other potential water sources, and just acknowledge that the council at that time received a letter in 2014 that was signed by Roy Whaley of the Sierra, on behalf of the Sierra Club, David Foster on behalf of Clean Water Action, Bill Bunch on behalf of Save Our Springs Alliance, Luke Metzger on behalf of Environment Texas, and Paul Robbins, urging that the city pause and do just exactly what we've now done, which is to develop an integrated water plan and provide that path for the future. And I just want to, again, commend those community members who stepped forward and said, let's think about how we do this. Let's envision and plan in a comprehensive way, and let's have a community piece of that to help guide that work. So thank you, huge thanks to our community members who helped initiate this, those who served on the task force, including, I see Jennifer Walker here, and our chair, Charlene Lurig. You all have done fabulous, fabulous work. And again, thank you to the city staff, our water utility, for all of your tremendous work on this as well. This is going to be really pivotal for our city.
Mayor Pro Tem, thank you for your leadership. It's been moved and seconded. Let's take a vote. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, unanimous on the dais with Councilmember Troxclair off.